Texas A&M football is back, and we have the latest from College Station.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are Locked On the Texas A&M Aggies. I am your host, Matt Galatson, publisher of Texas A&M Aggies on SI. Thank you for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Joining me today, as usual, is Harrison Reno. Harrison, fall camp is back. Football is back. The Aggies are back at camp. It's an exciting time in College Station. Today, we had a bunch of press conferences. We had a big press conference. Mike Elko, Scooby Williams, Marcel Reed, Trey Zune all spoke. And, man, it just feels good to be back, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels great. I know when I have to make the last 7-hour drive home of the year that football's finally here. I did that yesterday. Now I'm back. There's press conferences galore across all of college football. Matt, we've made it out of talking season, and now we're in truth season because we're about to find out the truth.
Yes, we are. And tomorrow when practice officially kicks off, Locked On Aggies and Texas A&M Aggies on SI will be on the scene, bringing you the latest news and notes from camp. But today, we got to hear from the head coach. We got to hear from the players. Let's start with Mike Elko, Harrison. He had a lot of interesting things to say. Most notably to me, however, and I think probably the most important update given this team's history over the last couple of years, especially last year with the way that things ended, health. Everybody is healthy outside of, I believe it was Marcus Garcia is the one player who is nursing a little bit of an injury there for the Aggies. But according to Elko, everybody is healthy. That includes Le'Veon Moss. That includes Ruben Owens. That includes Tyreek Chappell. That includes just about everybody you can think of under the sun. His exact quote, everybody is really ready to go for the first practice. We are ready to go. Marcus Garcia is the one kid that is nursing a little something. And we'll see where that goes. Other than that, we are ready to go. Health matters. Keeping our best players healthy throughout the year plays a role. Last year, the one positive on the injury front was that you didn't have a lot of soft tissue injuries and didn't have a lot of things happen in practice. So the things that happened without your ability to control them. Hopefully, the breaks go the other way this season. And I mean, just based on, the loss of Le'Veon Moss last year was really what derailed this football team, in my opinion. And just knowing that everybody is healthy and fully ready to go coming to camp is just a great sign.
Yeah, now you're just focused on, hey, can we keep everybody healthy in camp? Obviously, you talked about Le'Veon Moss right there. To start the year, to start camp, they lost Ruben Owens last year in camp. Again, like he said, it was a freak thing, quote, freak thing. Can't really control that. So in today's world where the rosters just aren't as stacked, you're not as able to just stack top recruiting class on top recruiting class without taking some attrition. Starting the year healthy, it's huge because now they can go in there, get a sense of what it looks like with the ones, and then start getting reps to these other guys that, eventually at some point you're going to need somebody to step up and go play with that ones unit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see who that'll be this year. Inevitably, there are going to be injuries. Inevitably, there is going to be setbacks. But it seems like this team, at least right now, is starting with a clean slate and going into these first few practices. It's just a great thing to see. Another thing that really stood out to me as well, Harrison, was the guys that were standing out to Mike Elko. He talked a lot about the offseason workout programs. And who has really made a big stride so far this offseason in terms of taking care of their body, working out, getting in shape. And he credited Tommy Moffitt, the strength and conditioning coach, a lot for that. He said, I think just like coaching, there's a foundation of what training looks like. There's a conditioning level, and there's a level of which you can push the body. In year two, that strength and conditioning capacity just starts to get to a higher level. And then he called out specifically Cassius Howell. He said he had a really strong summer. His body looks really, really good. Safety Marcus Ratcliffe was another one that he's done a really good job in this offseason. We're just bigger, faster, stronger team, and now we've got to go play football, and that's what we've got to go Play football well. That's what we've got to do. Go play football well. So another super positive update there from Elko. You love to hear specific players are getting called out, because usually in those kinds of situations it can sound a lot like coach speak, right? Be like, oh yeah, we're all bigger, we're all faster, we're all stronger. But he's pointing out some guys specifically that he's hoping that he's noticed has had a big summer, and he's hoping they're going to have a big year in the fall. And
it's two people that the Aggies need to step up and play as impact players. I mean, you starting with Cassius Howell, he was the returning sack leader for the team, returning edge rusher off that edge. When you talk about the questions with this team, I know we've driven it home ad nauseum. They got to be able to get after the passer with their reloaded front. They got to be able to stop the run. That's going to start with Howell, and seeing that he has gotten stronger, bigger, faster, stronger. Like you said, it sounds like a cliche. It's good news for the Aggies. And then Ratcliffe, a returning veteran over there at safety. The secondary had its fair share of problems last year, especially giving up explosive plays in some critical games and critical times. Hearing that Ratcliffe has taken that step to go ahead and attack the offseason workout program, I think gives Aggie fans a little bit more added confidence in that there are going to be improvements made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know he talked a lot about Marcel Reed as well, which is something that I know you took a particular keen interest in.
Yeah, I mean, because what was the first thing, I guess the first two things when you talk about Marcel Reed and what you saw from him last year going into this year, I think one of them was, man, that dude has a very slender frame. Like we gotta pack some weight on him. Gotta extend, gotta add on to the frame to make sure that he can withstand the grueling process of not only an SEC schedule, but just a college football schedule in general. That's something they touched on today. And then hearing about him as a leader, him as a personality, Elko said he was, quote, a magnetic personality that people gravitate toward, and he kind of went on to talk about if people aren't following you, then you're not doing your job as a leader. And it appears to me, from what he said, from what his teammates have said, that people are following Marcel Reed and somebody that people want to be around for extended periods of time, which I don't think is too far off of what we heard from opposing quarterbacks in the SEC at SEC Media Days when they talked about Marcel Reed as a person. That, in particular, at camp, Elko talked about how, that's something you want your quarterback to be there. It's not a distraction. It's not, that's something you want, because typically that means you got a pretty highly respected quarterback from the God tier family of quarterbacks in all of football.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Being invited to the Manning Passing Academy is a big deal. To all the top quarterbacks across the country, all the way. I think it goes all the way down to the grad school or the grade school level, pretty much, doesn't it? And then it goes all the top high school recruits, all the top college guys are there, and they get to really go head to head against each other. They get to know each other. They get to learn from, the minds of Peyton and Eli Manning. Archie Manning is there too. They're really learning, just how to play the quarterback position. And I think that was great, a great experience for Marcel Reed. And going back to the point you made about, adding a little weight to his frame, I think that's critical for him going into this fall. I mean, I know that, and we'll talk about what he had to say here in a second. I know Marcel wants to do that very much, because this is a guy that, he may have gotten a little bit of flack last year for the way that he threw the football at some points and his inconsistencies in that area. But even if he fixes all of those issues in the passing game, the strength of his game is running the football. He's very quick. He's very fast. And it's just a very critical part of the offense. So the more weight that he can put on his frame, the more of a problem he's going to be for opposing defenses. Because, I mean, if he can add weight and keep that speed, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's going to be very difficult to bring down and very difficult to catch all at the same time.
And he's already, possesses some difficulties already. I mean, just with that slender frame, I think his roster said he was 185, or I guess, and I think that's going into this year. I'd imagine that means he was probably 175, 170 last year. I mean, we're talking about a receiver body type. Devontae Smith went to the league around 160 pounds, and that was slender. Very, very slender. So we're talking about a quarterback that's built like a receiver in terms of his weight and his build. I can't wait to see what he looks like. I'm wondering if it's going to be noticeable in terms of when you see him walk on the field, if you can kind of notice, hey, he put on maybe 5 to 10 pounds. I'd imagine you will notice it. Maybe we won't see the physicality of it. Maybe you definitely don't want to see him taking hits, unnecessary hits. I know there's, other quarterbacks that talk about that all the time. You got to get down, got to go get out of bounds. But yeah, it's certainly, like you said, if he can do it and keep his speed, makes him all the more dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit more about Marcel in the upcoming segment. But I thought it was funny. Elko also cracked a joke about Reed trying to put on some weight because I think he has a little bit faster of a metabolism than I'm paraphrasing, but I think he's got a little bit different of a metabolism than I have. Elko's obviously, not the most slender guy in the world, so I got a good laugh out of that one. I think the other thing that really stuck out to me from what Elko said is just the overall feel of the program going into this season. They got off to such a torrid pace last year, and they started 7-1, and they were looking like a real college football playoff contender. And they really were until the end of the year when they, all the way up until the Texas game when they had a chance to go to the SEC championship. But they just weren't really able to finish. And I think that they're taking that new mentality into the season of, okay, now, things aren't going to be given to us. We need to step up and we need to take control of our own destiny, and we need to be able to finish down the stretch of the season. And I think that that's a really important mindset that they need to take into the fall.
Yeah, I think coaches talk about it all the time. You got to finish in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter is when you're most tired. I heard a quote. It was last week at media days, and it actually came from Kirby Smart. He talks about, I'm not focused on, the first 40 time. I'm focused on the 40th 40 time. What do you do when you're tired? And I think that's the mantra that A&M has kind of proceeded to take on this offseason is, hey, it doesn't matter what we do in our first 10, 40 times. It only matters what we do in our 40th when it's come down to the end. I think you see that kind of reverberate across the locker room right now, because not only was that a big focus of Elko's SEC Media Day speech, which, is kind of like the keynote address for the program. You've now seen other players talk about it in front of the media today, which when they're repeating stuff like that, that means it's been a central focus of their meetings throughout the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how they take that going forward. We'll see how they look in the first practice. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to get into Marcel Reed, what he had to say during the press conference today. Also, later on in the show, we're getting into Trey Zune and Scooby Williams. But stick with us for this break real quick, and then we'll be back on the other side. Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it on with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, in a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. Not too long ago, I was playing at Stevens Park Golf Course in Dallas, and I hit the first hole-in-one of my life. I was on the 11th hole, and I was really dragging, and I really thought I could have used a nice boost from 5 Hour Energy at the time, but I didn't have it. Somehow I still was able to sink it was on a par 3. I was still able to sink it. It was 100% luck, totally luck, but it still counts. And nothing would have hit the spot better after that than a 5 Hour Energy Transfusion, in my opinion, because I really needed it to finish that round, but that would have been a nice boost for me, for sure. But at the end of the day, golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th. On one order, it cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. All right, Harrison, we are back. I could use a 5 Hour Energy right now, but we're going to continue on through this podcast. And, it's a big day. We talked about it. Football is back. It's so good to finally hear from all these players and all these coaches gearing up for football. A player who's really receiving a lot of a lot of go this offseason from the media has been Marcel Reed. There was questions about him not attending SEC media days, which you shot down very well during SEC media days, and you had your own opinions on that. There's been questions about his passing ability, his inconsistencies in that area. Those are things that I think are going to work themselves out as he, gets his first full offseason as the starter and gets more comfortable and ingrained within the Colin Klein system. But he had a couple interesting things to say, and I think the one thing that really stuck out to me from Marcel is just that being the full-time starter for the first time, not like going into the season as the starter, as opposed to sitting behind Connor Wegman throughout the entire, summer and fall camp last year, expecting to be the backup. Now this is his football team. And I think that's going to be very important for him going forward. And he said, it feels very good. I'm excited to get out there again and play football. Fall camp is an exciting time. It might be a little long, but we're a month away from the first game, which is very exciting. We're going into fall camp with a healthy offense, healthy defense, and we can get it rolling this year. I'm personally am very excited to see what he can do with a full offseason under his belt as the starter. I know that, those questions are not going to go away until he answers the bell. But I think that, the mentality that he takes over the first couple practices especially is really going to set the tone for what the Aggies do going forward.
Yeah, and I think what's nice about the way the schedule's kind of worked itself out is he kind of has 2 tune-up games in terms of kind of getting ready for that first real start, which is going to be Notre Dame. It's 2 games where, people shouldn't freak out if the offense is vanilla, if he's not being asked to do much in the passing game. Like, that's normal. You don't want to, you don't want to give away your cards going into the beginning of the season. But yeah, I think this is really the time he gets to assert himself as that true starter, as that number one guy. He's had the whole offseason. Every signal of legitimacy in terms of him being the starter has been given to him. They didn't go to the portal to get competition. They got a veteran backup to sit behind him, and then they added weapons around him. Now it's time to figure out what he can do with those and how he can handle being the guy in College Station. Because as you said, Matt, every magnifying glass has been put on Marcel Reed over the offseason. He seems like, at the same time, he seems like one of the most talked about quarterbacks in the college football. But then you go back to last week, a few weeks ago, and he seemed like one of the more forgotten quarterbacks at SEC Media Day in terms of all the hype and circumstance surrounding some other guys, which I think maybe gives him a little extra edge, maybe gives this team a little extra edge that they're kind of the forgotten man right now.
Yeah, he's never going to admit that those kinds of things motivate him. He's too humble of a guy, I believe, to really play into any of those narratives. But I think you're absolutely right. I think no matter what he says, that is going to motivate him a little bit. That is going to give him a little bit of that extra chip on his shoulder to prove a lot of these doubters wrong and a lot of these naysayers wrong. It's an important early season, I think, for Marcel Reed, because you want to establish a rhythm. You want to establish a flow within the offense. And last season, and you want to expand that offense. You want to be able to do more with it within Colin Klein's system. And last year, they didn't ask him to do a whole lot. It was a lot of RPO, one read based stuff. If that read's not there, he takes off running. It was a very, to steal your word directly out of your mouth, it was a very vanilla system, what they were asking him to do. I think that even if they don't ask him to do a whole lot against UTSA on August 30th or against Utah State on September 6th, I think that you're still going to want to see a little bit more of a progression in terms of, okay, how is his footwork? Is he still doing a little bit too much down there with the strides that he takes within the pocket and having to get reset when, let's be a little bit more deliberate. Let's be a little bit more, straightforward and mechanical with our footwork. But is he doing those things? I think is going to be a little bit more important to watch rather than, are they asking him to read, 1 to 2 to 3 and then find his check down in those first couple of games. It's more about the mechanical things and the consistencies within the offense that are going to tell me the most in those first couple of games before Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, I don't think much is going to change from the first couple games. I honestly think it shouldn't. I think you should put on tape exactly what you did last year. You shouldn't need to really change much in terms of your offense. You can be RPO based. You can be, hey, if it's not there, tuck it down and run it to beat a UTSA or to beat a Utah State. I think really the first time you're going to see kind of the differences from last year to this year is going to be that Notre Dame game. Granted, it does make you pause a little bit in terms of, we're going to be implementing some things we've worked on over the offseason on the road in South Bend. Big game, one of the biggest of the year. Like, that can give you some pause, but there's no need to, I guess, give away some of those things early on in the year. Matt, he talked about the client system today, and he said, quote, I was comfortable last year. We haven't done too much to change it. With the talent we have receiver-wise, we've altered some routes. He goes on to say that they've kind of had a foundation year last year, and now they're kind to build on it. And he kind of ends it by saying they're trying to be explosive, which I think is the one word that has become a buzzword, but it's needed. If you go look at the teams that finish top in explosive play rate, whether it's in the passing game or the running game, they're usually your national championship contenders. We know the Aggies have the ability to be explosive on the ground. Now it's, can they be explosive through the air? And for what Marcel Reed was talking about today, it sounds like they have some guys that can go out there and be explosive. I mean, Mike Elko talked about his first impressions of Kevin Concepcion, dating back to the time he faced him when Concepcion was at NC State and Elko was at Duke. Talked about a guy that was working vertically across the field and making some plays against him. So I'm excited to see what the offense looks like. Heck, it can be vanilla, but just seeing those receivers go out there and win their one-on-ones and win their opportunities is enough for me to go ahead and say, okay, this is kind of what I'm expecting come that trip to South Bend.
Yeah, and they may have lost a guy like Noah Thomas, who's now with the Georgia Bulldogs. They may have lost a couple of these other guys to the portal and to graduation and to the NFL or what have you. But it seems that even without Micah Hudson being here, he went back to Texas Tech. There is a lot of explosiveness now in this wide receiver room. You talk about Concepcion, Mario Craver, Terry Bussey. This group really has the potential to be a lot more explosive than what the Aggies had in 2024. Let's take another quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to wrap up our thoughts from the press conference. We heard from Trey Zune, left tackle. We heard from linebacker Scooby Williams, and we'll talk about our big takeaways from each of those guys here up next. All right, Harrison, we are going to wrap things up with the last two players that spoke at the Texas A&M camp opening press conference today. Football, I'm so happy football is back. Just getting to talk about actual football instead of projections and all the different things is just so exciting. Trey Zune and Scooby Williams were the last two players to go today during the press conference. I'm going to start with Scooby Williams here. And it kind of plays off of, I know what you're going to talk about with Trey Zune. It seems like the big overall focus for this football team is specifically the players. I know Mike Elko touched on it, but specifically the players is finishing the fight. I mentioned it earlier in the show. They started off the season 7-1. They ended the season 8-4, losing 3 of their last 4 games. And then, obviously they lost in that bowl game to USC as well. So 8-5 overall record, not the finish that Mike Elko or his players wanted. And Scooby Williams spoke to that a little bit. And I thought it was very interesting because I kind of agree with him. I mean, it's no shade to the defense necessarily, but I think that a lot of the issues that plagued this team at the end of the year was that defense. Marcel Reed put them in position to win that Auburn game. He put them in position to win that USC game, and the defense just could not hold up their end of the bargain. Scooby Williams knows that. He said, we started 7-1 last year and ended up 8-5, and a lot of us feel like that was on the defense. Being one of the premier defenses in the country is something we're going to focus on. And it's certainly going to help that they're going to be fully healthy as well. Tyreek Chappell being back is one part of it. And, I don't want to put any of the onus necessarily on guys like Shamar Stewart or Shamar Turner or Nick Scorton, because I think those were very good players for Texas A&M. But I think that one of the things that this defense needs to do better to finish that fight is hold up in the run game along the defensive line and in the linebacker group and get after the passer and finish with those sacks instead of, pressures are great. They affect the play, but we need to get home and we need to finish. And I think if they can do those two things, and kind of shore things up on the back end, that's going to go a long way for them.
Yeah, Matt. I pulled up the page from last year in terms of their schedule. I look at those last 5 games. People talk about it all the time when they talk about Texas A&M. I mean, you talked about that Auburn game that they should have won that game. Anytime you score 41 points offensively and that's not enough, that's a red flag. And I'm just looking at it. I mean, it's not surprising that they ended the season the way they did in terms of losing those games because they played some tough teams. But if you talk about winning just one of those, like say Auburn, for instance, because you brought that up, if they win that game, you're talking about a 10-3, 9-3 Texas A&M team that, yes, they may not make the SEC championship because I don't know what the tiebreaker would have been between them and Texas at the end of that game if that game still goes the same way. But you're talking about a 9-3 Texas A&M team that is probably in the same position that South Carolina and Ole Miss were in terms of they were on the edge, right outside looking in on a college football playoff appearance. That's to me, it changes the narrative in terms of this team. You go from not finishing the drill to being right there, being one step away for playing for the ultimate goal, which was a spot in the college football playoff. In terms of the defense, like you said, I think they've kind of taken that mantra of finishing the drill, and that I love the accountability in terms of they're putting on them as defense. They're not putting on the offense. They're not shifting it away. They're saying, we didn't do our job, and now this year we're going into it thinking, knowing that we have to do our job in order for us to win.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the fact that if you win that Texas game, you're in the SEC championship. And let's face it, if you get to the SEC championship, even if you lose that game, it's really hard to keep you out. Like Ole Miss and South Carolina and Alabama, they didn't make it there. And that was probably what kept them out at the end. But if you're the college football playoff committee and there's a team playing in the SEC championship and they don't make it to the college football playoff, even if it's a 12 seed, you're doing something wrong. And I know that Trey Zoom kind of echoed those sentiments about finishing the fight as well, Harrison.
Yeah, I mean, he again talked about it. And as I pull up the quote, I just lost the quote. I had the quote pulled up. Trey Zoom said, at the end of our workouts this offseason, we've talked about finishing the workouts and finishing the hard parts because we want to be able to do that throughout the season. Again, it's just over and over and over again. I think by the end of fall camp, I think we're almost going to get tired of hearing the words finish because it's just going to be pounded. I mean, it's probably being pounded into their head, and now it's getting pounded into ours in terms of that's what they want to do. It's not about how they start the year. It's about how they finish. I'm excited to see kind of how that translates into how this year goes because, if they've been talking about finishing the drill, then something tells me that they're going to go out there and do it. Maybe not make the college football playoff, but those final 5 games, you talk about Missouri, home versus South Carolina, home versus Samford, at Texas. Like some of those final games, that final stretch is not as menacing as it may have looked last year, although talking about potentially ranked LSU, ranked South Carolina, and then obviously a ranked Texas to close out that year is not necessarily easy by any stretch.
No, it is not. And we will see how they take this mentality into the first day of camp, which starts tomorrow. And we'll have a lot more throughout the week on, our observations from camp, who's stepping up, who's separating themselves, and all the different takeaways we'll have there. But thank you for making Locked On Aggies your first listen today. For your second listen, check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find The Portal Show on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Give me a follow over on Texas A&M Aggies on SI and on X at Matt Galatzin. Follow Harrison on X at Harrison Reno. And we will see you next time.